Today on CityCast Nashville, winter is coming, and we've got what you need to know to prepare. The guys from Nashville Severe Weather, David Drobny, Andrew Leeper, and Will Minkoff, are back with their tips to get you cold weather ready. We're also approaching the anniversary of last year's deadly December 9th tornado outbreak here in Middle Tennessee, and so they're sharing their thoughts on the way disasters inequitably affect our neighbors with lower income status or language barriers. And as we think about the ways in which the next presidential administration's policies could impact Nashville, the guys explain why the National Weather Service is essential to their work. It's Wednesday, November 20th. I'm your executive producer, Whitney Pastorek, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Gentlemen, it's great to have you back. Please go around the room and say your name and your favorite type of cloud. David, we'll start with you.
I have a list of worst clouds.
Okay, I'll also accept worst cloud.
Mushroom cloud is the worst. So I'm David, and mushroom cloud is the worst.
Okay, Andrew.
I'm Andrew, and, probably stratus cloud. I just like those normal clouds that aren't any big deal, and you can just kind of sleep them off in the daytime,
That sounds good, yeah. All right, Will.
My favorite cloud is the cloud of suspicion.
Are you currently under one?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Fair enough. All right, guys, we last talked to you in June. You were, in fact, our second ever guests on CityCast Nashville, and I feel like there has been no weather since then, like negative weather.
You're welcome.
Been pretty quiet, that's for sure, especially in this drought.
Right. Are we still in a drought? We've had a bunch of rain lately. Has it mitigated that drought?
In parts of the state, yes. But yeah, we're still definitely dry. We could stand another few steady, heavy rains just to kind of get things back to normal. But yeah, we are still pretty dry.
And is this just going to be the way of the world now? I feel like it used to just not rain in September, and now it doesn't rain in September and October, and now it's not raining up till mid to late November. Is this our future?
Traditionally, Nashville has been dry in the fall. On average, it's our driest season. So it wasn't necessarily surprising. And yeah, I think it'll be probably part of the future just because really it has been part of our past, probably more than we realize. But when it gets dry like this, noticeably dry, we tend to pay attention to it more.
The cold weather is fixing to set in, and we all know that can mean anything from it's slightly chilly to snowpocalypse. I want to give you all the opportunity to help get our listeners prepped for winter. So what's the first thing people should do as they start to think about preparing for the winter weather here in Nashville?
Number one, know your home. Know what kind of cold you can tolerate, how resilient your home is to the cold. Do you need to wrap pipes? Do you need to wrap faucets? Do you need to close crawl space vents, etc.? Beyond that, know multiple great ways to get weather information. That's one of the most simple things people can do to stay prepared.
I have something really important to add to that. Get your sleds now. Get the stuff you need for your kids to go sledding. Go ahead and get it now. The problem, and we see it every time, hey, does anybody have this I need a size whatever for my kid, otherwise they're going to go out in jeans, and we all remember sledding in jeans and know how terrible that was. So go ahead and get that stuff now. That seems to be the biggest first world crisis that we see on our feed. And then the next question is it going to snow here? We average about 6-7 inches a year. Some years we get shut out. Some years we get on average. Some years we overperform. I don't know. So take that into consideration. Nobody's guaranteeing you any snow days. But if you do have kids and they're growing out of their stuff, figure that out now instead of trying to have to figure it out while it's about to snow and Target and everything is sold out.
I think that's great advice. I also wonder if you feel as though anybody took any important lessons away from our sort of ice situation last winter, in which we saw car after car sliding straight down a hill into a tree or another car that had already made the slide. Do you think Nashville has learned any lessons ever since that experience? No. Everyone's shaking their heads.
Yeah, we won't. Just generally speaking, wrecks and tragedies are things that happen to other people, not to us. So just risk it. That's usually the attitude. It's certainly not our messaging, but you ask, what does the community do in response? People really need to get places, apparently, and they're willing to risk a fender bender or worse in order to do it. That's my opinion.
I live right on a hill, and I always enjoy it when men, generally men, in their like F-250s with not four-wheel drive, try to make it up my hill, and they're just stuck in front of my house for hours on end.
I was offended for about 5 seconds there, and then I realized I've done the exact same thing, so I'm not offended anymore. I was that guy. I threw up my hands at first.
I keep playground sand in my backyard. Just a bag back there that I use for those occasions to help the nice men and their large vehicles get out.
Yeah, your car is not a boat and your car is not a snowplow. These are two things. No matter how tough your vehicle looks on during commercials, during SEC football games, in real life, it does not outperform ice or running water. It never has and never will.
What we learned the hard way last winter, aside from that your car is not a snowplow, that tornado season is more or less year-round here in Nashville. And we are coming up on the one-year anniversary of the December 9th tornado outbreak that caused such deadly destruction in Madison, Gallatin, Hendersonville, as well as out in Cheatham and up in Clarksville. I'm curious what you guys felt about the city's response to that disaster. And if there are any takeaways. I think we all know now what to do in case of a tornado, but are there any takeaways in terms of what we do after a tornado?
That's a complicated question. First thing is, I think that we do pretty well responding to the storm. Just as a community, people are generally cool, generally willing to help their neighbors. The government response is swift and helpful. The power companies work around the clock to restore power. You know, we've been through this many times very recently, and I think we all pretty much know the drill. Some of the issues are we have a lot of people moving to town who've never dealt with this before. You know, every storm is different, and who it impacts is different. So it's hard to say, well, this event is going to replicate again, and therefore we will do this, this, and this because that's what worked last time. What worked last time may not work this time.
I'll say from my personal perspective, you know, I work with World Central Kitchen here locally whenever there's a disaster. And so I was out there in the immediate wake in Madison, primarily on the eastern side of Gallatin, where we found a lot of people who did not speak English as a first language. And I know that this is something that you guys are really passionate about too, is making weather information, making city notices, making important info available to folks who might speak Spanish or Arabic or Kurdish or something else. How do you feel like our progress is with that sort of thing?
Pretty bad. So there's a couple of things. We've reached out in the past, and you know, I don't know that we have the capacity to solve that problem as an organization. I wish we did. I know there's some translation things that are frequent on social media that, you know, non-English speaking people can benefit from. Part of the problem is, though, the words don't always translate to mean to them what it means to us. A lot of people who are here have never seen a tornado, don't know what it is. You can tell them a tornado is coming in their native language. They won't know what that means and what to do. That is a real problem. And we saw that last December. We had a Spanish-speaking family was injured and killed in that tornado. They lived in a mobile manufactured home. It flipped upside down on top of the home next to it. And 2 Spanish-speaking people were killed there. You know, that is a need that needs to be met. And I don't think it can be met specifically through translation because, as the reasons we just mentioned before, the translation doesn't always translate for that community. We need people, in my opinion, and this is an unprofessional opinion, but we need people in that community who do understand it to take the lead and help with that kind of translation. The other thing is, you know, we use Twitter primarily, but we also are on Instagram, we're on Blue Sky, we're on Threads. But I don't know where those communities get their information from. And I have tried before COVID to try to understand how those communities function. And the gap is so big, I barely understand it. I'm certainly not capable of bridging it. So that is a huge vulnerability for us as a community. It's just, you know, you shouldn't lose your life because you can't speak English or understand what a tornado is. And so there's a need for education in those communities to get the message out.
All right, admit it. It's time to replace your not-so-trusty old boots. You know the best place to shop for quality, handcrafted men's and women's boots is at your local Tacova store, at the Mall at Green Hills, or on Broadway by the Ryman. That's right, you now have 2 locations to choose from, so stop by and grab a cold one as you peruse. Tacova's Nashville is at your service. It's always a challenge to find boots that fit well and can survive a night walking around town. But you can find your perfectly fitted dream boots with the help of Tecova's expert staff. Your new Western boots can elevate a casual look or add a refined flair to any outfit. Everyone will be asking where you got your sick boots, but I won't be asking because I know they must be Tecovas. That's TECOVAS.com. Don't go gently, y'all.
I do want to talk about mobile home safety because I know that that is something that is close to y'all's hearts. We see it all the time around here. What do you think we need to understand about the way that people's socioeconomic status?
Yeah, let me lay this out for your listeners.
Okay, please.
So let's review the last 5 years in and around Middle Tennessee, the weather disasters we've had, okay? Certainly we had the Nashville tornado. It was one supercell, and it went from basically Nashville all the way over to Cookeville. And the people that it killed were vulnerable and not vulnerable. That was a very unusual storm that produced a very unusually strong tornado. Most of the other events are different from that one. So I don't want to say that we're creating a rule or a concept based on one storm. Think about what happened in Waverly. There's a river that runs through that town, really is mostly a creek and is pretty docile during the day. But when that water dammed up from that historic flood and then the dam burst, all of the people who were on the low end of the socioeconomic scale are the ones who bore the exclusive brunt of that storm. We had, and people forget about this, we had 1 year where we lost six or seven. I think the seventh was debatable about whether or not it was weather attributed, but 6 fatalities from flash flooding in Nashville. 2 of those were killed in a homeless encampment. The others were killed in some of the poorer areas of town.
Yep, that was down around Paragon Mills, around the Nashville Zoo.
That's right. People were killed in their cars or just swept away at night. And those people were generally poor people on the scale, right? And then we had the Madison tornado. We talked about the socioeconomic part of that. They're living in mobile and manufactured homes. The tornado path does not discriminate. It goes where it goes. And you would expect that because it just goes wherever, that it would impact everybody proportionately, right? It doesn't. The impact and the vulnerability that we have is spreading. It's not just mobile and manufactured homes. It's poorly built homes. We've seen very expensive homes roll over on their sides and cause a fatality because the builders did not anchor the home sufficiently to the foundation. So the discussion needs to be, what are we doing to reach the people who are most vulnerable to a flash flood or a 100-year flood like we had in 2010? And then what are we doing for people who may be a little bit less vulnerable but may have a latent vulnerability they don't know about? So if we've got mobile and manufactured homes increasing, we've got poorly constructed homes, we've got people who are living in floodplains and driving at night across water-covered roads. Add to that a language barrier or an information barrier, and it's a recipe to indiscriminately increase the number of people who are getting hurt or killed by these simply by plotting what their socioeconomic status is.
I'm joining you from the floor of the International Association of Emergency Managers annual conference. It's a place where these exact topics are discussed in detail. I can tell you just from being here, there's a stronger weather presence cooperating with emergency management than there ever has been in the past. There is leadership in the Weather Service that wants to build strong connections to communities around the country. I think that we will solve these problems. There are lots of smart people working on it. I think it takes time. I also think that it takes a willingness for the community to maybe change some of the things that they do as storms come, right? Maybe we don't take that shortcut home. Maybe we do spend a little more time weatherproofing our home. Maybe we do spend a little more time making our home more energy efficient, our families more resilient, et cetera. I think there's work to be done, both at the government level and at the human level.
And just as a Houstonian, I'd like to point out that we all know what happens when you concrete over all of the floodplains in order to build stuff. The water's got to go somewhere.
And Nashville experiences the exact same issue.
In your dream world, how would Nashville handle this problem starting now and moving into the future? We just passed the transit referendum. We got nothing else to do. Let's pick weather resiliency and housing security as our next priority. What would y'all as human beings do?
Support TEMA's efforts for increased flood monitoring in communities across Tennessee.
David?
That's the same for me. And it will be for Andrew too. Like, I'll speak for him, but we are always playing catch up with where the flood is. It's not that we don't have gauges. It's that the gauges don't report to us the information in a timely manner. Now, there's the TEMA effort. The modeling is getting better, but it's not perfect. I would love to have a local network of all the problem spots and know when water is getting to a certain level upstream, we know it's going downstream, and to be able to say, all right, this is where this flood's going to be here in a few minutes. Bang, police get to the bridge, close it, or whatever needs to happen, and then we let everybody know, hey, here's your flash flood warning or your flood advisory for this creek in this area. You can expect this thing to be flooded for X number of hours or until we tell you otherwise. You know, water is historically in Nashville the biggest killer. You know, even our avatar has the tornado on it. It probably should have a flood on it.
That's a really great pragmatic solution. I hope somebody out there listening takes you up on it. Andrew, I'm going to direct this next one to you. In the wake of the presidential election, there are concerns that the Trump administration will follow the blueprint of Project 2025, which calls for downgrading and breaking up the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, aka NOAA, and that it also calls to commercialize the National Weather Service. How would that impact y'all's work?
We depend very much on the work of the National Weather Service and the people that work there. The information we put out is from them. And it's from their tools that they have that they give away freely to the public. And we receive that and interpret that additionally to the public. And so we depend on them a great deal. You know, speaking in hypotheticals of how, you know, that may be affected in the future, I can't speak at all to that. But I can speak to how we use them now. And it is very, very heavily. I think what's important in the whole discussion related to the Weather Service and the stakeholders that include us and the rest of the public is that the information that they give away is given away. It is given away freely. It is given away and offered to every population. How that's interpreted, how that's received, I think is mostly what our discussion today is about here, and making sure everyone receives that information. But I think it's always going to be important that fundamentally, on a base level, that information is given away from some of the smartest minds in the world to the people that need it most and are most vulnerable.
Whitney, let me say one other thing about that. I completely agree with what Andrew just said. There's a weather guy who's kind of an old generation guy. His name is Mike Smith. He wrote a book, several years ago, and in it he demonstrates how the value that the taxpayer gets from the money that goes to the National Weather Service is a tremendous value. The expected value received by the individual taxpayer from the Weather Service far exceeds the value that they're getting from most other governmental entities. If the National Weather Service were to go away tomorrow, Channel 2, 4, 5, 17, us, and a series of other agencies would be in a world of hurt, because not only do they provide forecasts and issue warnings for us, but they also operate the infrastructure that allows us to be able to communicate with people. They operate the radars that go around.
The models.
And the models. They have the databases there, the algorithms. These models require supercomputers. These aren't, $2,000 computer programs that people are using. These are supercomputers at our universities. So if you were to tweet us or Blue Sky us or whatever and say, hey, David, what does the HRRR model say is the timing for this line of severe thunderstorms that's coming through? If we don't have that National Weather Service infrastructure in place, I don't know the answer to that question. And so it's an invaluable resource to every person who's in America.
Well, it sounds like regardless of the future of NOAA or the NWS, the kind of takeaway from this whole conversation seems to be that we need to be looking out for each other a little bit better. We need to be communicating with each other a little better, making sure that people have the information that they need when they need it. It can't be all on y'all. To that end, given the complete and utter collapse of Twitter, how are you finding it out there? And what are your suggestions for our listeners to perhaps pick up the ball that y'all have carried so well for so long and push it forward?
Well, we're not leaving Twitter. We've been there a long time. We have finally got the technology where we think we can send everything out through Twitter, through Blue Sky, through Threads, all at once.
What about people who are not on social media at all?
Oh, I can't help them because we're a social media based thing. But, we do YouTube lives. And so if you just want to open up YouTube and subscribe to our channel, we go live whenever there's a warning out there and you'll get a push notification for that. Just turn on your local television. I mean, we have good meteorologists here on local TV that's free. Turn that on when it's storming out there. They'll tell you what's going on. And I wouldn't hesitate to listen to them.
They're going to interrupt your football game and you're going to be mad, but you're going to be glad you knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's another rant.
We'll do that one next time. Oh, part 3. And to that end, if people still want to learn more about weather and maybe even take a class with these guys, y'all still have your Patreon up and running. You just had your first class. How did it go?
We had a great time. We had a good group there. And we do offer some classes. Mostly it's just us cutting up, but we do share some information. About we learned about weather. Radar.
We did.
Learned about radar. we learned about radar on this past class, and that went well. Just to talk about weather radar, the importance of it, how we interpret that, and so that went really well. And we offer that to the folks on Patreon, and we have so many that give and share with us, and that helps us do what we do. But we do also, we're already planning actually 2 weather safety classes a year that are free to everybody. No, we're not going to paywall safety information. And so we're planning on 2 of those a year just to help us prepare for severe weather season, flooding, whatever.
All right. Y'all are awesome. Last question. Will it snow at 3 p.m. on the day that I'm scheduled to take off for Houston, Texas?
Of course it will.
Can I get a drive time forecast for a month from now?
I mean, if it's my luck, it will. When it happens to me when I go do that stuff.
The people, they love to make you get unnecessarily specific. Don't waste their time with that, folks. Well, guys, you're continue to be such a real resource and instrumental to our survival here in the city, and I can't thank you enough. And it's always great to have you here. And David, you're always welcome to come do a rant anytime.
I don't think that's necessarily good for me, Whitney, but I appreciate the offer.
You got to have an outlet, man.
I have an outlet. It's these guys on here. I don't know that it's necessarily healthy for me to share that with hopefully the entire city.
All right, guys. I hope you have a great holiday season. I hope that this is one of our nice, calm, pretty mild winters with a light snowfall in the middle for sledding and nothing else.
From your lips to God's ears, Whitney.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Remember, even if you've abandoned Twitter, you can find the Severe Weather Guys on most of the other social media platforms and at their own website, NashSevereWx.com. And if you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Y'all take care of each other.